What's up, everybody? Welcome to Bushwhacking History in Buffalo. Today we have the long-awaited edition of Greek Fire. So, welcome everybody in the chat. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna get right into it. I made a video already. I say good morning in it because I recorded it this morning, but we're gonna go over the video that I made on it. We're gonna do a mainstream look at what Greek Fire is. We're gonna do what I see in like truth drops or as far as in games and media, and in also my old books that I have, which is what you're looking at right now. So this is going to play for about 15 minutes, maybe a little bit more. It's actually quite longer than that. So I'll be uh, rip rapping with you in the chat, getting the ideas, and then afterwards, this is going to allow me the ability to like stop and narrate and um, again engage back and forth with you. This will be a little bit interactive. So this will play for about a half an hour, but it's actually 35 minutes. Well, exactly 36 minutes and 33 seconds. That's crazy. So we're going to see mainstream look at it, like Discovery Channel clip it, little clip from Joe Rogan and George St. Pierre talking about it, stuff that I seen when I was researching. I'm going to present it to you. And with what was available as far as at the time components, I'm going to throw some crazy ideas out there. So, what's up, Burning Tree Bear, PT Ripa, Paolo, Trail the Table, Gringote Bear. Thanks for showing up, guys. I appreciate it. So let's watch this. I'll chat with you right now and let's do Greek Fire. Appreciate it. Thanks for stopping by. Hit like, share, subscribe. This is Bushwhacking Greek Fire, part one. Probably going to do number two later on down the road. Wrap it all up. So let's go. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, what's up? Good morning, everybody. This is Dustin, Berserker Bear. Now, we're going to do a little bit of a deep dive on Greek Fire. I'm not going to say what Greek Fire is. Not going to say what Greek Fire is. We're going to take you through uh, what I will show you as. Okay, here we go. Can you guys first of all hear me? Robbie Rab, what's up? Welcome. LVK. When I say I'm not going to say what Greek Fire is, that might be confusing. I should have prefaced as I was listening to myself reviewing this. I should have said that. I'm not going to say what I think that it was, meaning that the mainstream has no idea what it is. I'm not going to sit here and say I know what it is. I'm going to present to you what the mainstream says that it is, what we see in movies and games, and then speculate as to what it could be, and then other applications because I think it was used for just way more than what we're being told. So there we go. Greek Fire that I have in my books. Okay. Greek Fire that is presented as it is in the mainstream from mainstream videos and other sources. Okay. We're going to show it in a movie, how it's depicted in a movie. And we're going to go through some other stuff. Shout out to Jared Boosters, gave me the idea for this. We'll go through more mainstream stuff. Now, I'm not going to say what Greek Fire is. I'm going to show that there's questions about it. The ingredients are questioned. And when we're presented with something like this, as who actually invented it from a pretty credible source, this is the Oxford reference. Okay. There you go. Traditionally, but not probably wrongly, traditionally, but probably wrongly accredited to Kalinikos, Greek Fire. We're going to check him out and we'll go through some more articles. And all I'm going to do is tell you what I think about it, putting together some ideas that I have accumulated through my research, going back to, the possibly the Phoenicians and Basques having settled the New World 1K years ago. And we'll show some ideas as to how we might have adapted this technology in other ways, whereas history tells us a lie. So let's get into it and let's start this Enjoy.
Perhaps they had knowledge there's knowledge that we lost. Like just think about the Greek fire. It's a weapon that was used in the naval battle, and it's really known about historian. You can research. They still don't know exactly how it works, but it was so destructive. It was like at the time it was like a secret weapon, like they didn't want to share, and it was known to be very efficient in naval battle.
I don't know what that is. I don't know about
Greek fire. If you go Greek fire, you'll get it. Boom. It was used in naval battle. So we used to throw. They used to throw fire flames, and they used to people that are burning. They still burn in the water. So they think it was made with some kinds of petrol or they still don't know. They cannot recreate it, and it's clearly something that a lot of historians have talked about. It's called Greek fire. It's just an example that it's clear that it's a technology that we have lost.
Well, if you just look at the pyramid.
The weapon on our list. At number 6. Mysterious. Deadly. Greek fire. In the 7th century AD, the Byzantine Empire was coming under constant attack from the Arabs. But Byzantium, also known as Constantinople, had a secret weapon. Somehow, they were able to project flames at enemy ships, creating an inferno that couldn't be extinguished.
Accounts of Greek fire show that it was the ultimate weapon of terror, a liquid that could burn on water. Imagine being at sea in a naval battle. The enemy is shooting jets of fire at you. This stuff burns on the water, it burns underwater, and it sticks to you. Men are screaming all around. This is the horrors of Greek fire.
As a weapon, fire is hard to beat. It kills you, it hurts you, and it instills fear in you. And that is why Greek fire has to be on this top 10 list.
It could be shot in a lethal jet up to 150 feet.
In 678 AD, it destroyed an enemy fleet and killed up to 30,000 people.
And it was used in land battles too, to deadly effect.
By taking Greek fire and putting it in small handheld pots that exploded on impact, they essentially created the world's first hand grenade. It would be centuries before the world's battlefield saw anything like this again.
We've seen how devastating Greek fire was. But what secrets does this ancient napalm still hold? We're counting down the ancient world's most lethal weapons. Created by the Byzantine Empire, it was used to great effect to defend their capital, Constantinople.
Greek fire may be the best kept secret in military history. This actual secret recipe could only be put together in a capital, Constantinople. It consisted of 4 components: the mixture itself, the machine used to heat and pressurize it, the machine used to fire it, and the crew used to deploy it. Now, unlike modern classified military information, Greek fire, still a mystery.
The different stages employed men who only knew the secret to their part of the process. Once ignited, it was extremely difficult to put out the flames.
Greek fire could not be extinguished by water, only by strong vinegar and old urine and sand.
Many scientists have tried to recreate Greek fire, tried and failed.
We don't know the recipe for Greek fire, but we do have an idea of how they projected it at high pressure: the force pump.
This force
AKA siphon. Siphon technology, we're going to go over that.
pump was invented by Heron of Alexandria 2,000 years ago. And
only by strong vinegar and old urine and sand.
many scientists have tried to recreate Greek fire, tried and failed.
We don't know the recipe for Greek fire, but we do have an idea of how they projected it at high pressure: the force pump.
This force pump was invented by Heron of Alexandria 2,000 years ago, and has a pressurized siphon that can project liquid fire. A lethal jet of flame over 30 yards, burning at 800 degrees Fahrenheit.
Many view Greek fire as the inspiration for the lethal flamethrowers and the horrors of napalm in the 20th century.
Greek fire added centuries to a declining empire. But every weapon has its limitations, and Greek fire could only be used in a limited range on a calm sea.
A downside? Wind. If the wind changed in the midst of using Greek fire, then it's the Byzantines that would have suffered. Talk about a plan backfiring.
In time, the Arabs adapted to this terrifying weapon.
Eventually, Byzantine's enemies learnt to stay outside of its range, and they soaked felts and hides in vinegar and put them onto their warships to protect them.
But for years, this lethal flaming concoction kept Byzantium safe.
The ingenuity of putting these quite simple ingredients together, and the fact that we still don't know the exact chemical composition of Greek fire, is what for me puts it in this top 10.
In Arabia, in the first half of the 7th century, the religion of Islam had just been founded. It brought a unity to the Arab people that had never before been seen. The successors of the Prophet Muhammad now intended to harness this energy to build a mighty empire. The warriors of Islam would march to bring the world under their rule, starting with the lands of these two adjacent empires.
Now, what we're going to do, let me pop in right quick here and just keep you guys posted as long as you can hear me. We're going to go over this. We're going to go over a little bit more in detail after this plays through, which is what I want to do. So I want to get your engagement. And this is, like I said, interactive. This is going to play through, and then I'm going to come in afterwards and follow up. So you guys want to write questions down and stuff like that. Save it to after, because we're going to use my textbooks like this. Okay, this one. We'll pull in Archimedes, Death Ray a little bit, and wrap it all in. So just keeping you guys on point, right? Here we go.
The Persians, who at the time followed a religion called Zoroastrianism, and the Romans, who had now been Christians for 3 centuries. Both of these empires had dominated the region for over half a millennium. Over the next few decades, the Islamic Caliphate would expand rapidly under skilled leadership, taking their foes by surprise and overwhelming both of these empires at the same time. The cities of Damascus, Jerusalem, Antioch, Ctesiphon, Alexandria, and others all fell to them, until eventually the Islamic Caliphate had toppled Persia entirely, crippled Byzantium, and stretched from modern Tunisia to modern Iran. With such victories as these by the 670s, the Muslim Caliph Muawiyah now had his eyes on the grand prize, the city of Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, the center of Eastern Christianity, and arguably the greatest city in the world at that time. However, the Romans and their emperor Constantinos IV, or in English Constantine IV, were determined to defend the great city. Sometime in 674, the siege of Constantinople began. Historians aren't entirely sure when, because this period was so chaotic that no one really had time to write history. A mighty empire.
Okay, you guys are back. Do we have some technical difficulties? I see that we're good now. They may have flagged. Well, they did. Okay, so let's. I did get flagged as far as a copyright flag on all these. I always get copyright flags or a strike. They say it's not a claim. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah. So I already recorded this and loaded this video up to YouTube, and it's unlisted. So it already went through. It already went through. So it could be my lag. I apologize. Let me back up. And where did we leave off? What I wanted to say is I'm going to go through all this stuff about a little bit about Byzantium. Okay, so sorry about that. Let's backtrack and play again.
Persia entirely, crippled Byzantium, and stretched from modern Tunisia to modern Iran. With such victories as these by the 670s, the Muslim Caliph Muawiyah now had his eyes on the grand prize, the city of Constantinople, the capital of the Eastern Roman Empire, the center of Eastern Christianity, and arguably the greatest city in the world at that time. However, the Romans and their emperor Constantinos IV, or in English Constantine IV, were determined to defend the great city. Sometime in 674, the siege of Constantinople began. Historians aren't entirely sure when, because this period was so chaotic that no one really had time to write history down, but thankfully, enough important began. Historians aren't entirely sure when, because this period was so chaotic that no one really had time to write history down, but thankfully, enough important details were recorded to tell this story. Historians aren't entirely sure when, because this period was so chaotic that no one really had time to write history down, but thankfully, enough important details were recorded to tell this story. The Arabs knew quite well, one does not simply walk into Constantinople. It was heavily fortified.
Nor does one simply walk into Mordor. Per Boromir.
And very well defended. Even in times of desperate weakness, the Byzantines could almost always count on the city's defenses. Still, the Arabs were determined and faithful, but they couldn't have accounted for another detail. Even if they didn't fear the walls of the city, they were still in for a nasty surprise. During this battle, the Romans presented their secret weapon, as I said, essentially a medieval flamethrower. They called this weapon Pyr Thalassion, that's Greek, but perhaps you recognize the words. Pyr meaning fire, related to pyro, and Thalassion, sea, related to a word sometimes used in English, thalassic. Sea fire, or also Pyr Romaikon, Roman fire. There were many names for this weapon, but the name we use in English came from the Roman fire, thalassic. Sea fire, or also Pyr Romaikon, related to a word sometimes used in English, thalassic. Sea fire, or also Pyr Romaikon, Roman fire. There were many names for this weapon, but the name we use in English came from the later Crusaders, who called it Greek fire. Ironically though, this name likely applied to another different, similar weapon, not the weapon discussed here, but still came to apply to this weapon later on. Regardless of what we call it, what was it?
I'm sorry, what did he just say?
How did it work? What did it do to the Arab? Regardless of what we call it, what was it? How did it work? What did it do to the Arabs and the other? Ironically though, this name likely applied to another different, similar weapon, not the weapon discussed here, but still came to apply to this weapon later on. Regardless of what we call it, what was it? How did it work? What did it do to the Arabs and the other invaders who felt its wrath? During this siege of Constantinople, these flamethrowers were mounted on ships. When the Arab ships sailed into the waters surrounding the city, the Romans dispatched their ships and used the weapon on them. The Arab ships were naturally made of wood. The fire devastated their fleet. Not only did it hit the ships, but the actual substance stuck to the ships and sailors, and even floated on water and remained burning, causing chaos among the Arab fleet. The siege of Constantinople would last for 4 years until finally the Arabs were defeated and left. The Byzantines clearly owed their victory to this weapon.
The invention of ancient flamethrowers culminated in the elaborate designs of the Byzantines. This fire siphon of the 7th century AD used a large reservoir of liquid naphtha, or Greek fire. As this Renaissance manuscript illustrates, Greek fire was deployed as a dangerous weapon at sea. The modern equivalent today would be napalm. We imagine that machines which could project fire were an innovation of the 20th century. Yet it's evident that for thousands of years, flamethrowers have been used in battle. These reconstructed Byzantine flamethrowers are examples of a simple but lethal weapon. This model has been built to see if ancient flamethrowers really could have worked.
What I'm holding here is a hypothetical reconstruction of a Byzantine flame-throwing weapon. We know that the Greeks had Greek fire, so it's not unreasonable to assume that there may have been smaller versions, such as this, used by maybe artillery troops.
When many flamethrowers were used by an advancing army on the enemy, the effect must have been truly terrifying.
The operational system of this is actually a simple siphon pump. As the piston is pumped backwards and forwards, the flammable fuel is ejected from the nozzle at the front and it's ignited by a small flame. The modern flamethrowers are based on a similar principle, similar flammable material, but theirs was a continuing pressure system. This simply works on a push stroke.
The ancient Greeks passed their invention of early flamethrowers on to the Byzantines, who developed them further. The siphon technology used by Byzantine engineers was certainly known to ancient Greek scholars working in Alexandria, Egypt, hundreds of years earlier. One can only imagine how their ancient flamethrowers would have been used on the battlefield over 1,000 years ago. What is certain is that it would have been a devastating weapon. It is an example of warfare technology which was not invented in modern times, but reinvented. Warfare technology which was not invented in modern times, but reinvented. It is an example of warfare technology which was not invented in modern times, but reinvented.
Okay, so then this is the siphon technology that he was talking about, or that you heard being talked about in there. That seems to be the pivotal tech that which delineates this Greek fire, because it was able to be thrown from a mechanism, that mechanism being the siphon. And when I hear siphon, I automatically think of Typhon. Now, what I'm going to do here is just try to lay out an idea, possibly to get you guys thinking in a certain way. Okay, not to shape your thought or to just to propose an idea. Now, I've cited before about the work of Barry Fell and Stephen M. Collins, his lecture on the lost 10 tribes of Israel, and how that the Phoenicians and the Basques may have colonized. There you go. There goes more of a detail of it. May have colonized North America, possibly, allegedly, around 1K years ago. So let's keep in mind the classical period of history is 2000 BC to 500 AD, and Greek fire comes on the scene, as they said, in 672 in the siege of Constantinople. Now, let me just preface by telling you that they have, like he said, the Greeks passed it on to the Byzantines. Oh, that was a little bit of a clip from it in Assassin's Creed. Truth drops are all over. So the Greeks passed it on to the Byzantines, but if you watch the movie 300, and Days of Noah has actually talked about this, and used a clip from 300 where the Persians were throwing over the hand grenades with the flame in them. Look at that picture. Keep that in mind. So, but the siege of or the Battle of Thermopylae, where the battle that was depicted in 300. I mean, that took place in like 400 BC or 450 BC, something like that. So, the time period to 450 BC to 672, they had this ability to put stuff on fire, or incendiary stuff at least. But it wasn't until the Byzantines, like they said, where it had this siphon technology. Now, what is this siphon tech? This isn't going to be a real in-depth on that. I'm doing broad strokes here, but I'm still going to tell you what I think is going on, at least in my opinion, should be left on the table. So that was a presentation of the video that I put together of mainstream, and we're going to show another one as far as truth drops go, as far as movies. Look at that. I pause it on this for, so is that fire being put out or started? And they don't know what the ingredients are of this stuff, but it appears Gerard Butler did, and we're gonna see why. And shout out to Jared Boosters. I got the idea from him watching his last. We're going to play a clip of his like first 3 seconds.
Will include what I consider to be relevant images. However, the topic I'm discussing
Guy
is
does really
really
good
so
work.
ancient
Check
that
him
we
out and sub to him. Now,
don't
see,
have any.
check these cannons. I've hypothesized before that cannons are water monitors. Here's the idea. I think that with what I just showed in that picture of that, was that putting the fire out or starting the fire on the wall? I also think that they could have been flamethrowers. Now, I'll say that again. I think cannons were water monitors. I also think that they dispatched flame out of them. And we're gonna detail that now. And again, shout out to Jared Boosters. I watched this video. I watch all of his videos. Very good researcher. And the first 3 seconds, you see those could be fire shots coming out of there. Although I think it would explode stones that they say were shot out of them. Whatever. But is that actually shooting Greek fire? Now we're gonna go through my books. Okay, about Byzantium. This is the Great Ages of Man. And I'll show you in context what they say about it. And they don't, the significant things about this Greek fire is that, okay, the siphon technology, it's a thick substance like napalm. And H2O, I guess, increased the veracity of the fire if it was put on, and we're going to show that because I guess Gerard Butler knows how to make this. And I'm being kind of humorous there, but and the actual ingredients, closely guarded secret. And the administration of the actual siphon tech itself was compartmentalized, as they say, so one person didn't know what the other was doing, more easily to control the actual information. But so that said, let's actually show you the clip I'm talking about with truth dropping movies, or just showing what used to happen.
Magister with your demonstration.
Ah, yes, I'll see it now.
You have to understand, my lord, I've never...
Show me! Now!
Show him! You're fired of the Greeks. Fire it! Let's move it!
That's it. So, you betrayed me. You promised me Greek fire, and this is all I get.
Lord Oliver.
I should have had you hung,
Lord
drawn,
Oliver.
what?
With your permission, my lord.
You guys see Leonidas?
For more water, for more fire.
Good. Better. My God, you are a magician, not a magister. I want this for every cannon. How many men will you need?
20?
There goes Butler. Leonidas.
This way, magician.
Magicians, huh? Okay, so in that application, it was used out of a cannon. Okay, so I thought that was pretty cool. And as far as, we already looked at that stuff. Now, if you were listening, and I'll bring this back up, this is what Oxford is saying, who is being attributed to for Greek fire. Okay, now this right here for me, as a researcher, enthusiast, if you will, gives us right to question. Traditionally, but not probably. Also, if you heard in that clip that I played, what he was saying about what it was called, and who cares what we call it, that's unbelievably confusing. So I think that we have right to question. And this guy Kalinikos was from Helios or Heliopolis, I believe. Okay, Baalbek, and he is in Wacky. he's attributed as being credited as the inventor. But Oxford says probably wrongly. Okay. And we can't question this stuff. Give me a break. So the first appearance of Greek fire again is like the siege of Constantinople. But it says in this article, perhaps the use of Greek fire was the land battle of Delia, which took place in 424 BC. Okay, so which is it? And you know, we're scoffed at as like pseudo.
So you've been.
It's kind of a Greek fire was the land battle of Delia, which took place in 424. So the first appearance of Greek fire again is like so it looks like we're gonna have to run and gun with this one, guys. I'm sorry about that. Back. Okay, thank you very much for staying with me. My connection is all good. I have an Ethernet cable. You bears out there. Let's keep going. Let's this is kind of interesting. Let's see where this goes. We got some more. Let's try to get it in. Thanks for staying with me, guys. It's kind of interesting. All right, let's go. Backtrack. Ford says probably wrongly. Okay. And we can't question this stuff. Give me a break. So the first appearance of Greek fire again is like the siege of Constantinople. But it says in this article, perhaps the use of Greek fire was the land battle of Delia, which took place in 424 BC. Okay, so which is it? And you know, we're scoffed at as like pseudo historians. I mean, you got to be kidding me. Look at what you're presenting to us as what the not even the actual ingredients. I understand that that's not found, but that's kind of a question as well. So okay, we checked that out. Now let's go into the books and see what the actual books say. This is a really cool. Now I bring this article up because not only does it have some cool names, it has the actual pictures that I've used or that I have for my books, namely this one right here. So I'll share all these underneath in the description for sure, and you'll have availability to get at them. Now, we check both those out. Oh yeah, afterwards I'll show you some knickknacks. We'll wrap it up. It's all the stuff I got here in my bear den. So stick around. But okay, so I got this book. Good looks to my homie D Hood. We still gonna put together some compilations for you. That dude's a researcher too, likes the local gravy. So I showed this during that little excerpt. The books that I have, I will present to you what I have in them as far as Greek fire, secret weapon of the Byzantines. And I'm just going to scroll through this and actually tell you what I think about the Byzantine Empire because they say that it lasted for 1,000 years. Okay, and I actually to preface on these pictures, I took a picture of the actual paragraphs before and after to give context. Okay, but now I understand that there's a notion going around about the alt history community research that there was time added to the timeline, and I would say I don't. That's really tough for me to pin down. Here's that picture from the everyone. This is a portable version of it, manning a flame gun. Okay. Now, when we see pictures of burnt or torched buildings or citadels, maybe this stuff was used on a massive scale. And I'm going to underline that going forward. But as far as the Byzantine period, or if any time was added, I would say for you timeline historians, check out the Byzantine period, because if any time was fluffed or added to a certain time in history, I think it would be the Byzantine period, because it's just a series of administrative changes to the rule to try to fend off the Muslim, and they were able to fend off the Muslim horde for, or they call it the Muslim horde, for 1,000 years, and they do attribute a lot of it to the Greek fire. Okay, now is that not necessarily an excuse, but an excuse, but a mechanism to be able to fluff the timeline and say, oh, it was we were constantly taking blows from the Muslims, but we were able to use this technology. And I think that they were able to use it in other ways. I don't think it was only applied in the siege of Constantinople. That's kind of my big theory here. And we'll show pictures. I'd like you guys to pause and read this stuff, because this is a very important book. And I'm gonna show you the chapter on Byzantine period, the Muslims and the siege. So pause and read this. My notes are in there also. Byzantium is Constantinople, is Istanbul. Nexus of Greek and Roman, you have my notes in here. Please pause and read this. We're not going to go through it. I don't want it to be too long. I'm just trying to lay a groundwork to show that, yeah, there was probably technology like this way long ago. And I think another cool idea that I have, that's where it's mentioned in here, inflammable liquid. Give yourself time to pause and snapshot that. Pro tip, snapshot is great, and do not disturb, screen record. There you go. So if you're going to look into a fluff timeline, I would say laser focus on the Byzantine period. A series of administrative changes to bring the power back to the capital, which was Constantinople in the Eastern Byzantine Roman Empire, taking the power away from like the senators, if you will, in the outskirts of the lands they conquered in conquest, to try to solidify their defense of Constantinople against the Muslims. And they applied Greek fire, allegedly. And that was one of the texts that they had to be able to fend it off. So let's go back to my pictures and tell you what I think is going on here. Now, we had a picture like this that I put up on my YouTube channel community a while ago, and I balked on this video before, guys, and I'm sorry, I don't like doing that, but it became too much of an in-depth for me, and I just wanted to put out a small bite-sized idea here that they could have applied something like this with those cannons. They could have had the technology to do it. And you might say, how would they feed? So I would think, how would they feed this stuff with the fuel? And what was the fuel? Now, when my armies march, they cook meat, and meat creates grease. Now, I think there might be a portion of this that's just literally grease fire, like a grease fire, Greek fire, grease fire. Because let's check this out and show what happens from the good old trusty Mythbusters. Where they at? Okay, here's a good picture too. So you see how this guy's adding something to that? Now, I don't know, it appears that they're presenting this picture like they're putting that fire out, but I don't know, are they starting it though with a grease fire type of thing, Greek fire? And all they're doing is just adding hot boiling grease to water. And if you have a water monitor,
It's a quick fireball test to see if the mini-me measure will still do the job.
Here we go. Scale kitchen configuration. 1 teaspoon of water.
boom. Are they just mixing water with grease that's produced from cooking for their armies at a ready on hand fuel source? Now, that's kind of a crazy idea, but what I'm saying is they did have all the available components to them to be able to. You say, how do they pipe that stuff? Well, here goes another. I remember from back in the day watching a History Channel episode on how the Chinese actually were drilling in 1000 K or 1000 BC, 600 BC. Okay. And you say, well, how can they pump gas? How can they pump liquid at that time period? Well, that's how they would do it. Okay. Now, keep this in mind. Flexible downhole bamboo cable and wheel from which it would be deployed. Deeper wells used larger cylinder, a large cylinder, excuse me, with a vertical axis. Now they're saying that this application was used just for drilling in China, which it probably was. But if you're a general or if you're trying, you're going to use it for other applications. Now, keep this in mind that they had tubing to, even if it was just water and they were mixing it together, is what I'm at. Something kind of contraption like this, like I just showed. Were they doing it at the head where they were releasing it and it's just literally a grease flare coming out to make it something like this? Where's that picture that I had? Oh my goodness. Sorry, I'm going back and forth here. Like that. Okay. And then how you would feed it would be the application of this. And you'd have a face. So picture these tubes feeding that fuel to something like this behind it. And you're just spraying out using the water monitors to spray out Greek fire on the citadel or whatever that you're taking over, usurping. I think it's a possibility that they would have uh, the means to do this, taking in all the information that I just presented. You were able to have cords or tubing, and how they would make this stuff in that article. Where am I? I'm getting lost here. How they would make these things is they have bamboo. It's hollow, but it has dividers. They would split it in half. It's detailed in these articles. Split it in half, take the barriers out, and then glue it back together with natural glue, and then twine it. So it effectively was a pretty good sealed tube. You can do water. You can do, as a matter of fact, let's show that. You can do stuff like this, and it reminds me of the actual hydraulic water mining. These are the bamboo pipes in China back in the day. How they would, looks like a roller coaster, right? Is that where they get wooden roller coasters from? Also, it looks like the how they would move the mining water for hydraulic mining. So there's a lot of similarities here. I think now when you want to get into the chemistry of what it is, this is not a say all end all presentation here. We don't know what it is. Obviously, historians don't know what it is. But I'm saying that if this stuff was available back in the day, all these components, like I'm saying, the drilling, this stuff, they even had the massive wheels, like you see in here. Pay attention right here. Like this thing was over the ground. So did they burn them? Did they burn the stuff out and then hush it with the ancient hushing mining, damming up a reservoir and hushing it all out? Dan Carlin cites that the Tatars were even doing that. As I said before, you better believe so would the Romans and the Byzantines be doing that. So here we go. We don't know what the ingredients for Greek fire were. I'm gonna track back to this, and this is going to be a culmination of videos. But I wanted this to be more bite size, just to get an idea. Now, also keep in mind what I talked about Barry Fell, Stephen M. Collins. I got more work coming on that. I'm trying to get my hands on a book about North America being colonized way back in the day. Now, with that, and if that, was this stuff used here? And when we see burnt citadels and stuff that looks like melting, I will propose that some people might spray a whole citadel with this pitch or with this Greek fire and light it on fire, or with pitch and then set it ablaze, or do something like this, as you see right here, to a citadel, like in the background. So is it really an X Factor event, or is it actually application of fallen man, or both? Creation and the mimic of it. So that was kind of my broad swath on Greek fire. I'm going to do more. I just wanted to get this out there and get you guys thinking in a different way, because there may have been settlements here in North America 1000 BC. They may have had this tech used otherwise, because, of course, as I showed, history is certainly not what we're told. So I'll report back. Thanks again for coming by. Hit the like, share, subscribe, and be safe out there. Happy Monday. Paulo, that's a great question right there. Let me address that right quick. Greek fire. Yeah, we've done that before, right? How I've thought that these were water nozzles. Now that's what I'm proposing here in that picture that I show. Your question right here, Paulo. Yeah, that's what I'm speculating here. That if they can mix that whatever it is, whatever that's what I'm saying. I'm not telling you what Greek fire is. We're going to do some more truth drops here now in the games and stuff like that. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm proposing here. Is that not only could they probably have been water monitors, I'm layering it more. That's why I said I'm proposing some crazy stuff here. Um, where is that? I think that they can also have been fire flamethrowers, massive ones. Also, now there's a story. While I'm showing you this, there's a story. There was a question about why would they? I think that they could have thrown pitch on these castles and burned them. Now there's a story about Hannibal Barca when Hannibal's going over the Alps. In order to get his elephants over, they had to incline the mountainside effectively, and what they would do was they would start a fire on the rocks and then throw vinegar over it, and that would make the actual rock brittle enough to break and make a slope. So allegedly Hannibal did that for his war elephants to get over the Alps. So now earlier, so that's if you spray pitch on a citadel, light it on fire and burn it, and then and then you extinguish it, it makes the actual rock and the brick itself real brittle. So as far as when I'm writing in Typhon in the actual comment section, I drew something earlier just real quick. And of course it's not going to be here. Here we go. Now keep in mind that picture from earlier. That crazy one. Okay, keep this in mind. Now look at that big old massive whatever it is. I think things were massive back in the day. We've talked about big mining and massive mining with Philip Druzinin. Now I drew this, and we're going to layer it with some game truth drops, so stick with me. What I'm saying with that question, Paolo PT Ripa, you might not have needed a fuel source if you can dam up canals, and you could have used water as the fuel because it's grease fire, I think, and you just had grease boiling somewhere. And I'm going to show you how they did that. They did have cauldrons on ships, and you could have had grease boiling. So if you can just mix grease with water, boiling grease with water at the nozzle head, I think it could shoot out grease fire. And you mix some sodium with it, like they say the ingredients are, it becomes like a brimstone thick, like napalm. Now, if you were able to do that and have it fed with those tubes, like for example, the Chinese tubing, and you had a phalanx on each side, and you were tracking that across the land, and you had all these cannons sticking out, it would not only look like a snake going across the ground, it would look like it could be where Typhon comes from, possibly. Typhon and the Hydra, the many headed Hydra. I'm just speculating here. Could it be? But that's why I say that I think that we have all the components for that. And you look up articles and it Greek fire and you got a picture of a dragon. I don't think it was just used for naval. And I think stuff like this, when you have a compartmentalized application of a technology that they say is so secret nobody knew what it was. Well, maybe it was so simple because it was just water and like a hushing technique, like the ancient mining technique of hushing. And they just literally diverted water, used water and grease as a fuel source, and had a mixture that they mixed it at the nozzle head. So that's something I just drew real crudely. Now let's go into the truth drops right quick, or the games. Now this is one that I brought out from back in the day. If anybody can guess this game, please proceed to the next level. But that's kind of where I got this is kind of where I got the idea for the shape of these things. Possibly. because it looks like those things in the picture. Anybody know this game? Classic. So picture if this thing was rolling over the water or the land, something like that drawing, and it had cannons coming out of it with wheels on it, type of deal. And that game is classic, old school. That's Sega Genesis. That's Jungle Strike. It's one of the funnest games ever. Now they did have cauldrons on ships. This is from a game I'm playing right now. Assassin's Creed Origins, about Egypt. Pay attention. Peep game right here, bottom screen. So I'm not saying, I don't even know what the application of this was. I was going to look it up, hipfire, but just so they did have, boiling stuff on ships. Okay. I wouldn't necessarily call that a truth drop in the game, but I would just say it's really cool, pretty dope. Just a proof of concept, if you will, to use MythBusters term. And yeah, that's a cool game. And let's now this is the MythBuster, excuse me, Assassin's Creed Revelation. First one. That's where you see the picture of my thumbnail. This is a little bit dramatic, but good eye candy. There you go, Zaralath. Yeah, that was a classic game. Sometimes I think that those older games are more fun than even, for example, Assassin's Creed. So yeah, I like just showing this stuff because I want to present to you what I have now. In my books, boy, those last pictures in the video were quite blurry, but now let's go into here. Fiery guns in their ships. This would be a trireme, I would think. Now, what I'm trying to say here is they always present it like it was naval. It says sea fire, and it would burn on fire or burn on water, similar to napalm. But they also had, and I showed you how that dude made independent, like portable one, and of course, they would look at the application right here. They're actually spraying it onto a citadel. Now, with what I just said about Hannibal over the Alps, you would do it with intention to make the stone brittle. Now that said, if you had big, we have a ship here. I still think that it's entirely plausible, like with what I've presented, that they might have had something like these things rolling over the ground. And where does this picture come from anyway? So let's check out the chat and see what you guys say. Red Cap Goblin, welcome. Zaralath, yeah. That's another good one. I think that one came out on PlayStation 1, maybe. The Jungle Strike is on Sega, taking it back. And let's see what else I got here to show you guys. I wanted to show you my books. And oh yeah, this is that clip I showed you about was making fun of Gerard Butler and notice Leonidas. That's from this channel called History Buffs. I recommend him to watch for movies, and he goes against, or he does the actual history of the actual movie and sees how legitimate it matches up to what is real and what's false. So History Buffs is a good channel to watch as far as movies. That's where I got that one clip from, with Gerard Butler from the movie Timeline. Very cool. So, what do you guys think about that Nintendo app? I played Nintendo. I played Sega. I'm kind of an old school gamer, if you will. That was my kind of a roundabout of Greek Fire. I don't want to go too long on it. It's got the siphon technology. It's questionable. Its history as far as the accreditation of who invented it. And oh, here we go. This is an experiment that, if you check out my YouTube channel, I have a pretty cool, extensive. There's 17 videos in it. Playlist of Greek Fire. Check that out. And the first one is like a 50-minute episode where they actually do proof of concept. But it's very cumbersome, and it's on a calm day. And if it was windy, it would have blown right back onto the boat. I highly recommend coming to
As
check
the
out that
temperature
playlist. A
soars
lot of
to
it.
over 1,000 degrees, it's all too easy to forget that this is the technology of a long-lost empire from over 1,000 years ago.
Allegedly. Yeah, it's a very cool playlist, so check that out. And so what I'll say is, in conclusion, and to wrap it all up, is we don't know what Greek Fire was as far as the ingredients. It probably was an amalgamation, obviously, of, I think, grease, and it could have been fed with water through the Chinese tubing of bamboo. They would have got that through the Silk Road connection. And it's possible that it wasn't just used for naval. I think that it could have been used on land in an application such as this. And I know this is really crude. And, if history is older than what we think, and we are in the Bronze Age for a lot longer, I know that I cited the Classical Age. I'm still using mainstream history and to compare and contrast against it. But I like to propose some crazy ideas sometimes when I do my deep dives. So, a very interesting lethal technology of the old world. What was it, and was it actually used in this application, like that picture that I show? And I think that's legitimate to ask. And is that where you get Typhon and the many-headed Hydra from in old Greek lore and mythology? And with that, let's go to check out another. It's not related. It could be related. Is Archimedes' Death Ray. Another book that I have in the archives right here. Tells all about Archimedes and his death ray. Archimedes is the one that said, if you give me a lever big enough, I can move the earth. So if you want to check that out, I'll probably do another deep dive on this one down the road. These actually kind of are quite extensive for me. I like doing boots on the ground here in Buffalo, but every so often I'll drift off and put out there what I think is going on with certain things such as Greek Fire. So let's hop back in the chat and see what's going on here. Does anybody have any questions or any feedback right quick before I'll start showing pictures of my knickknacks here? This is what you see around me. Big movie fan, so let's just go through. I'll scroll through this. Well, I'll start the slideshow and see if anybody has any questions. So thanks for stopping in and checking out the Greek Fire. I hope that I at least got you thinking about something in a different way that was proposed through our mainstream academia in a not so coherent manner. And if nothing else, I like to get you thinking off the beaten track while staying professional with it and using sources. Let's do this again. Using accredited sources along with internet and stuff that we look up as far as alternative history. I really hope you guys appreciate that. And this is the bear den right here. That's a speed loader rounds from my neighbor parents' house back in the day. He was in the Battle of the Bulge, so that's officially from Battle of the Bulge. This thing. Where is it? Of course, it's out of wingspan right now. I don't know where I put it. Yeah, I just figured I'd do a little bit of a slideshow of show you my bear den and yeah, Merlin. So Merlin, that's a good bring up right there. Allegedly, Merlin were those Karnak stones in northern France, Zarelath, in Brittany, France. Allegedly, those stones of Karnak that are all in rows, similar to these terracotta warriors. That's kind of funny. Allegedly, that there was an approaching Roman army, phalanx. And oh, speaking of phalanx, that brings up something that I should wrap this up with. Um, Allegedly, Merlin turned all of the Roman phalanx into stone. Shout out to Stelium 7 and his work on biogeology. But allegedly, Merlin turned a Roman approaching phalanx into stone, and that's the Karnak stones in northern France. Some gravy for you. There goes my black belt. It's got the white stripe on it because I was under 21. It was just a rule of that Taekwondo dojo that I went to. There you go. There's your boy and my homies. So yeah, this is where I sit and do my work pretty much in the bear den. So I appreciate you guys coming by and subbing to my channel and appreciating what I do and supporting my work. I hope to put out a lot more for you. It's never a burden, but it gets to be a little bit because I procrastinate. So that's on me. Your support and your appreciation for what I do, I really love that a lot. So thank you very much. And let's end it on something funny here. This is a shout out to Trail the Table. Where you at? Good buddy. There you go, white phosphorus. Just throwing ideas out there. So we'll end it on this. This is in humor. This is from a movie Eric the Viking called The Sinking. And I think the clip is The Sinking of High Brazil. And it was shown to me by Trail the Table. So thanks for coming, everybody. After this clip ends, I'm going to end the broadcast. Thanks for sticking with me through the bumps and the hiccups. And that was Greek Fire, part 1. I'll do another one down the road. And at least I hope to have gotten you thinking a different way, like I've repeated myself numerous times over and over and over again. All right, this is Berserker Bear, Bushwhacking History. That was Greek Fire. Thanks for coming by. And let's end it on Eric the Viking. High Brazil is not sinking. Very fitting for this time.
Stay calm. This is not happening. What do you say? Now, I know what some of you must be thinking. The day has come, we're all going to go down, etc., etc. But let's get away from the fantasy and look at the fact.
We do seem to be going down quite fast, Your Majesty. Not trying to contradict you, of course.
No, of course you're not, citizen. But let's stick to the facts. The threat of total destruction has kept the peace here in High Brazil for 1,000 years. So whatever else is happening, you can rest assured, High Brazil is not sinking. Repeat, not sinking.
May I just make a point in support of what King Arnulf's just said?
Oh, we'd be delighted, wouldn't we?
Yes! We certainly like to hear.
Save yourselves! High Brazil is sinking! Oh, but you don't know our safety precautions.
It can't happen.
But it is, look!
I already appointed the Chancellor as chairman of a full committee of inquiry into exactly what is going on. And in the meantime, I suggest we have a sing-song.
Good idea.